The SEC commissioner, is he going rogue? He just fired a major warning shot at the ACC, the Big 12, and anybody who stands in his way.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive lineman and co-host of Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno, host of Locked On Canes. On today's episode of Locked On ACC, could the ACC and the Big 12 find any benefits of an alliance? Because it's pretty obvious the SEC is not going to do them any favors, and the Big 10 probably won't either. Is the SEC commissioner, is he purposely trying to divide the college sports landscape? Because Kenton, now Greg Sankey, SEC commish, has been all over the news this week because the SEC spring meetings have been in progress from Destin, Florida, and he's talked about everything. College football playoff format, revenue splits, like all the major issues that are right now separating the Big Two, is the SEC and the Big Ten, from, you know, ACC, Big 12, and the group of six, I guess it is now, with the Pac-12 reemerging. And Sankey made a comment saying that some people within the conference, the SEC, have questioned why the league doesn't break away from the NCAA. Commissioner also said, this according to On3 Sports, that the SEC is seeking more autonomy for all four of the power conferences, well, mainly his. He explained that while he doesn't have complete authority to make the decision to leave the NCAA, the willingness is there from teams in the SEC. All right, so Kenton, if he's claiming he doesn't have the authority to do that and like acting like, oh, that's probably not even good for college sports, why even bring it up? I think Sankey loves to use the threat of, if you guys don't do exactly what I want, I can just take my powerful SEC and we'll leave the rest of you behind.
To say that the SEC are not exactly bastions of academic excellence would be an understatement. Those damn idiots, let them go. I believe this very firmly. None of this is by accident. He gets paid millions of dollars. Greg Sankey, in and of himself, is not a stupid man, or at least I would hope not. You know, and the theory of America and the promise of America and the meritocracy says that those who are the most talented, the most qualified, will advance. If Greg Sankey is, in fact, intelligent and qualified, I would believe that this statement was very intentional, because this is not a small statement. This is not a statement that comes with it's a weightless, ho-hum type of thing, especially in a moment like this where everything is so precarious in all of college sports, where everything is so, everything right now is being written on shifting sand, and here today, going tomorrow, you're in this conference, you're not in this conference doesn't exist. LOL, JK, we're back. That is where we are right now. And in this moment, to be talking that kind of rhetoric, if you are not 100% sure that you can do something meaningful to make it happen, silence is golden, as they say in the movie theater ads that come on right before the movie does. Silence is golden. And this was a moment where he could have stayed silent, but instead he says, well, I've got folks asking me, why don't we leave? Because they don't get paid like you. Because they should not be intelligent like you, Gregory. Gregory, go to your member teams and say, hey, we don't leave because you all don't make enough, even through football, to withstand all of your other sports having to be funded. Hey, we don't leave because if we were to be outside of the NCAA, now all of a sudden, all of our games don't count for these other teams. Why would they continue to play us? If a game against the SEC is now schedule equivalent to a game against the NAIA competition, why would they continue to play us? That is why. You're like, come on, man. You got to be better than this.
I think when Sankey brings up stuff like this, it's very calculated. And I think it's bargaining 101. Like, you bring up these like crazy threats, like, oh, you know what? We're just going to go do our own thing. We don't need to be a part of what you guys do. You bring up crazy threats like that to make other stuff that you really want sound less crazy, right? Because Kenton, a lot of people, of course, are going to complain about this 4 automatic bid proposal, which Sankey claims he doesn't even necessarily want. I think he does want that. I think he does want the 4 auto bids, as so does the Big Ten. Definitely Tony Petitti of the Big Ten wants the 4 auto bids for the Big Ten, which would be 4-4 for the Big 2, and then just 2 auto bids and 2 auto bids for the ACC and the Big 12, respectively. But I think when you make big threats like this, it's easier to get the other stuff you want as concessions. And also, let me say this about Greg Sankey, loud and clear. For as much as I disagree with a lot of his ideas, because those ideas usually benefit the SEC at our expense and the little old ACC, I respect the hell out of this guy, Kenton, because what's his job? His job as the commissioner of the SEC is to do what's best for those, what are they, 16? For those 16 member institutions. It is his job to do what makes them the most money and gets them the highest profile. He's not spewing out this greater good nonsense that the ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips and Greg Yormark are throwing out there. I mean, it's Greg Sankey's job to prop up the SEC, and he does that incredibly well. So I don't have to like everything he says, but I respect the job he does for his league.
I get what you're saying, Donno. However, everything in life exists on a spectrum or a bell curve, as they refer to it as, right? There's a amount where there's too little. Like, so I would say Jim Phillips is on the too little side of like propping up your conference while respecting everybody else, giving them their just deserved. I'd probably say Yormark and Petitti are near the peak of the bell curve, where it's like you do a great job at advocating for your guys, but you also understand everything else. And then there's the other side of the slope where it's too much. I can tell you the thing that I do outside of Locked On, because with all due respect to this network, I don't get paid enough to pay all my bills from this thing. So I've got to have a job outside of here. I'm a recruiter. Now, what I do as a recruiter, I hire engineers, software engineers, CTOs, head of marketing, all that type of stuff for early stage startups. It is absolutely right that you're supposed to come with a really high number and see where you land in the middle in terms of negotiation. That's how offers go and all that good stuff. But you know what can be problematic? When somebody's first offer is so grandiose and ridiculous that the company is just like, actually, pack up. We're making it about face. And it may be a candidate I love. It may be a candidate I'm like, hey, this candidate has all the acclaim in the world. They are 1 of 10 who can do this. And they're like, yeah, but if they're 1 of 10, I believe we got better luck going to get one of the other 9 than doing this. So what am I saying for the SEC here? The SEC and Greg Sankey are not realizing this is, to some degree, a symbiotic relationship. Let's pretend, for kicks and giggles, they do leave the NCAA. What then, very seriously, what is the incentive of the other teams to play them?
Oh, none. I mean, they would just have to play a 12-game conference schedule, then do their own tournament.
So you come up with a 12-game conference schedule, you do your own tournament, all that good stuff. Okay, fine. But now we can pretend like, oh, these other schools don't bring in ratings to your schools. We can pretend like Miami, Florida doesn't bring in great ratings. We can pretend like the Palmetto State battle between South Carolina and Clemson don't bring in great ratings for them. We can pretend like Florida State every year. Exactly. We can pretend like those don't bring in great ratings. We can pretend, but you're obviously going to lose ratings. And let's talk about one of the biggest fish that now is still going to have to side with the NCAA because they're still there, Notre Dame. You're not going to have those matchups. So you look at that and you say, well, at least we'll get full autonomy. What does that full autonomy even look like? How do you all govern yourselves? How do you stop a team that's blatantly cheating without an enforcement body or of any sort? What, do you just vote around as the group of you and decide who's in, who's out, who did something wrong and who didn't? Oh, good luck with that. So, at the end of the day, I'm sick of Greg Sankey. I'm sick of all these SEC coaches, whining about, well, it's clear it's not about winning. It's just about not losing.
Oh, yeah.
Losing to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. And I'm sorry, not losing to Oklahoma, getting blown out by Oklahoma. I believe the score was 24-3.
Yeah.
Where I come from, we call that getting skunked. Now, when you get skunked, when somebody's leading you by 21 points, if you're playing a video game, back in the day before we had internet to play with people worldwide, you had to play with your cousins, your friends on the block and all that. When they got up 21 or when you got up 21, pass the sticks. Next person up. You got past the sticks by a 6-win team, buddy. By a team with a losing record, they gave you the pass the sticks treatment. And you talk about playoffs? Yeah. Playoffs? Come on, man.
By the way, I still do video games that way. I hate playing online because as a 40-year-old man, there's nothing more degrading than like some 16-year-old in mom's basement whooping my butt at NCAA 25 or college football. Like I can't do it. So I'll play against my son. I'll play against my cousins and friends of mine when they're over. I do not play online because I'm tired of losing to children.
Hey, listen, I ain't mad at you. I don't play online either, only because I need this to be a time of relief for me in terms of video games. You get online, you find some randoms in the park or the rec on 2K. Now it's a terrible experience because they don't know how to pass the ball, and your guards all think they're Steph Curry.
Yeah, it's rough out there on those video game streets. Well, with all this, this SEC power grab, and the Big Ten, obviously they're in a similar situation to the SEC when it comes to leverage. They're not being as blatant about using it, but you have in the next tier, you've got the ACC and the Big 12. Could the ACC and the Big 12 benefit from some sort of an alliance? We'll break it down next. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Folks, it's going to be another great night for FanDuel. I've got my Florida Panthers hopefully bouncing back against the Carolina Hurricanes. They can win the series in 5 tonight, the Cats. The NBA playoffs are in full swing as well. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. Live betting is a game changer, and you can do live player props during the game. 3-pointers, points, over-unders, so much stuff going on. FanDuel live betting is awesome. Same-game parlays, by the way, are great. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Because if you head to FanDuel.com right now and place your first $5 bet, if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. Make sure for your next listen, you check out Locked On Wolfpack with Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone. Check out Locked On Canes with yours truly, Alex Donno. All right, so Kenton, I don't know if the Big Ten is like fully going to commit to rock the boat as much as the SEC is right now, but obviously they've already taken some steps in forming an alliance. They've had their own private meetings, the Big Ten and the SEC. And I wonder, maybe the ACC and the Big 12 are already kind of working together because Greg Sankey, and we're going to talk more about it on the squad tomorrow, he kind of, subliminally, but pretty obviously bashed Brett Yormark, commissioner of the Big 12, Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, for coming out with what he referred to as coordinated press releases about, hey, yeah, we voted in favor of direct seating, straight seating for the greater good of the sport. Like Sankey took that as a shot, like, oh, we're going to do something for the greater good when Sankey doesn't do that. So he was upset about that. So maybe the Big 12 and the ACC are already kind of working together, but can they get more power and more leverage, Kenton, with some kind of an alliance?
People are saying anything short of a merger is what the ACC and the Big 12 need to do. I wouldn't even be opposed to a merger. I have said this 1,000 times. You cannot beat these teams and these schools in terms of the SEC based on, and the Big Ten as well, based on just pure viewership in terms of school for school. You cannot do that. Your only shot, your only hope is to overwhelm them with a sheer amount of games, with a sheer amount of like, hey, we are making this fiscally make sense for everybody. We talk about the cross-country travel of Cal. Well, how would you feel if this new conglomerate conference put you in the Western Conference or whatever the case may be? So now you end up going to play schools like Arizona and TCU and all those schools. A lot of former Pac-12 schools are in that conference. So, it'd be an advantageous situation in that regard, and you bring strength in numbers. You say, hey, we can come up with innovations that would be something that we want to see. Hey, we could come up with a quote-unquote conference of champions in terms of, cutting out a couple conference games, and then at the end of the season having the top teams play other top teams and let that be a way to get big viewership, big draw, big eyes on our sport and on our conferences. You could do all of these things with multiple conferences combined or with multiple conferences working in tandem, but neither conference can do that on their own. What would a conference of champions look like when TCU and UCF are de facto involved? No shade or offense to them, because the same thing can be said for the ACC. What does that conference of champions look like when we have to include a Syracuse and, and this is no disrespect to these brands. This is not saying that these brands are valueless or terrible. The Syracuse and the NC State, I'll use my own school as an example. But it's just different when you can get schools that are all having great seasons and say, hey, we want to see y'all match up against each other. These are kind of rubber matches, but it'll help us set the brackets for the playoff, and we'll go forward from there, something along those lines, as opposed to, we just are going to figure it out on our own as the ACC. Y'all figure it out on y'all own as the Big 12. Right now, we aren't figuring out much of anything, and it is only because somebody, some bald, handsome fellow, correctly predicted that the SEC would turn on the Big 10 at some point in time very soon. It was only because of that prediction that is coming to pass that the Big 10 has not also jumped on that bandwagon and said, actually, to heck with those guys. Let's go ahead and join up with the SEC over here and do something special.
I like your idea, and this is something Yormark and Phillips, in my humble opinion, and I'm sure you share that, they should start having these discussions if they haven't already. And why you need to start working on this now, Kenton, because, all right, the Big 10 is already at now a 9-conference schedule, and we're seeing some reluctance for big non-conference games there, right? Like the contract between USC and Notre Dame is going to expire 2026, and they may not play again. It's, a great historic rivalry, but with that being non-conference, and now that the USC's in the Big 10, it's such a rigorous schedule, they may back away from that. The SEC, we think, is about to go to a 9-game conference schedule. They're currently at 8, which means fewer dates available, and maybe, again, reluctance to schedule as many big out-of-conference games. So with that happening, I think this gives more of a necessity for the Big 12 and the ACC to look at more scheduling agreements at the very least, right? I mean, and some of that's happening, like in 2028, Miami and Utah are going to open up their seasons in Las Vegas for one of those kickoff games. So maybe we'll see more stuff like that. But I like your conference of champions and tournament idea, because, again, I mean, if the other two are going to try to leave you behind, especially the SEC, you got to take matters into your own hands.
Exactly. Either you get creative, get innovative, or die on the vine. Those are your two options.
Yeah.
Those are your two options. So even if the innovation just looks like some formal agreement, I said this when the you remember, what was it? It was the Big 10, the Pac-12, and who else? And they called it the Alliance. Who else was in that alliance?
I think it was the ACC also.
How'd that alliance work out?
It lasted for like a day and a half, that alliance.
Where are most of the power brands in the Pac-12 at now?
The Big 10.
Oh, so the group in that alliance, kind of snuffed them out. Let me tell you something. You need to not only make this a thing, put it on the books, get some legalese involved, and make sure that it's like hey, we are doing this purely for each other. We need to show up for each other in this moment, because, again, this is running the risk of some of these conferences. We saw the Pac-12 disappear overnight. I'm not saying that the Big 12 and the ACC are at that junction. I have always told people, even without Clemson and Florida State, the ACC is much more of the Big 12 than it is the Pac-12 after all their teams started leaving. I still firmly stand by that. However, do you want to be relegated to that permanent status of, hey, you're below and beneath these teams? Regardless of what can be said about, we play a tougher schedule and and all this and all that, you can say all of our champs have lined it up against each other. The best team out the Big 12, the best team out the ACC, they lined it up. They got it in. They did the thing. Now, you can make your argument of, oh, we're so good that we only need to play 9 games against each other. But guess what? You have not put that up against the medal of the best from the Big Ten. Now, have you? Because you're so special. You're such wonderful little boys and girls down there in the wonderful cities, bustling, thriving economies outside of your colleges like Starkville, Mississippi. Oh, boy. I've heard such great things about Gainesville. I've heard you must go. Again, not for you University of Florida related reasons, just because it's a wonderful city, Donno. Oh, and don't get me started on Oxford. Mighty, mighty Oxford. So, the reality of this thing is you are up against it right now. You can either band together and work it out. As it's a phrase that I was taught by some of my elders a long time ago. We can either hang together or we can hang individually. But either way, you're going to end up hanging somewhere. That's the question. Are y'all sticking together or are you dying individually? And I think these conferences have to be very honest about that. So Drake Toll, stop trying to steal our teams. Come on our show. Yeah. We'll come on your show. We'll do the good things, man. But, you got to work together.
Well, when we come back, we're going to answer some questions from listeners, including our predictions on what the future of the college football playoff is going to look like. I've got a pretty clear idea of what that's about to look like in a little over a year and a half's time. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on Locked On ACC. All right, Kenton, here's an easy question to start with. I would love for y'all to speculate on how you foresee the future of the college football playoff. I mean, I think you tell me, because I know Greg Sankey said that all the options are still on the table. But the one that's gotten the most buzz is they're going to go to 16 teams as soon as 2026, and it's going to be 4 auto bids for the Big Ten, 4 auto bids for the SEC, 2 each for the ACC and Big 12, a group of 5. And I don't know how the rest of it confuses me with the at-large and then group of 5, but Notre Dame will be able to get a bye with direct seeding. So I think it's going to be the 4-4-2-2 model with a 16-team playoff is where we're going.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And from what I've heard from my sources that are fairly close to that situation is it's all over but the shouting in terms of that. Like it's, we are headed downhill. Not only does that idea have the momentum, but at this point, they're just ironing out the fine details of it in terms of the which bowl games get what and all that type of stuff. But, that's what I'm hearing. That's the immediate future. I mean, for the long-term future, I don't see the playoff going beyond like 20, 24 teams. I don't ever think it'll go beyond that because for some reason we're obsessed with the top 25 in college. And I think that you could fit all of them in if you did 24. But again, short-term, immediate, yes, the 16, 4-4-2-2 and one situation is, from what I've heard, it's pretty much signed, sealed, delivered. It's yours.
Yeah, and so auto bids are going to be a thing. I think auto bids are stupid, Kenton. Like it takes so much actual competitiveness away from it. Because to me, it's like, okay, you take your top 16 teams, no matter what conference they're in. Now, I am not the commissioner of the ACC, so I can look at it as a college football fan more than anything else and say, I just want to see the best teams and the best possible matchups. And even if that were to mean, the ACC only getting 2 or 1 team, which, wouldn't happen in a 16-team field. But even if that meant getting a lot less than the SEC or the Big Ten, I think to me, this entitlement of auto bids is ridiculous. I just let the best 16 teams play.
I 1,000% agree. And even beyond that, a lot of people have brought up a chart saying, oh, these would be the top 16 teams. This is how it's shaken out. And these are the teams that would have made it. This is how many teams from each conference. And so people are using that to say, well, the SEC and the Big Ten are actually being snubbed here because they are averaging 5 apiece. Here's the problem about that. You're using data from before when NIL and the transfer portal were a thing.
Right.
You are using data from when it would have been advantageous for a young man to sit on the bench for 3 years for Nick Saban and then go play 1 year and go to the league, that was a better deal than a young man said, you know what? Why would I not? Why would I do that as opposed to going to start at Miami for 2-3 years and then going to the league? Why would I do that instead of going to Virginia Tech for 2-3 years? You know, and making maybe a commensurate amount of money, maybe more, maybe less, but I'm getting reps right away. And if things ain't going well, I can cut bait and say, hey, this ain't working out. So, you know, I honestly and truly see this as a entitlement thing. I don't like it at all. I'm anti-entitlement. I'm very much so. In sports in particular, earn your damn keep.
Yeah. All right, this is a question. It's obviously from a Miami fan in the way that it's worded, but I guess this could apply to any team in the ACC. It says, does Miami have a plan in case we get screwed from the college football playoff? Well, I mean, Florida State had a plan a couple years ago, Kenton. They sued everybody after they didn't make it to the college. But I mean, is there, like, you can't do any, like, you are at the mercy, whether you're Miami or SMU or Louisville, Clemson, NC State, whoever, Florida State, like, you are at the mercy of the committee, because by the time you know, we're already drawing up the 2025 playoff field, which could be 12 teams again in 25 with direct seeding. And, like, you know, there's the committee has your fate in their hands. Like, I mean, if Miami were to feel like they're one of the top 12 teams and they don't get in, like, do you sue somebody like Florida State did? I don't know what you can do, Kenton. I don't think there is a plan B. I guess maybe the plan B would be to try to join another conference.
I agree with that. But the only problem with that is, what is your logic? Like you said, Donno, what's your logical step of recourse? That's a big hurdle for this.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it is, even if you say join another conference, is it worth it? And will that other conference have you? Because, like, I keep trying to tell people, and like folks keep not listening to me on, a lot of teams do not have the cachet. A lot of teams do not have the viewership, do not have the numbers to command a new conference, because this is a zero-sum game. When you go to a new conference, that is a new mouth at the table to feed. Now, if that mouth that is coming to the table is like, oh, wait, I thought this was a potluck. I got donuts, I got McDonald's, I got Chipotle, the honey chicken Chipotle too, not the regular stuff. I got the premium good stuff here. Let me tell you something, that honey chicken got me hooked. But, you know, this is a situation where some folks are going to pull up to the table empty-handed, like, hey, invite me in. And it's like, you paid that buyout and we don't have a space for you. So, you know, it's a situation where I know that this fan's heart is in the right place and you want to protect your university. Yeah. All of us do. Sure. All of us do. All of us want our university to be taken care of. I want dear old NC State taken care of. You see how much Miami paraphernalia Donno has in the background. He wants the Canes taken care of. He's a Hurricane alum. But the reality is, what can you do if you get screwed by the committee, other than hope that folks like me and Donno can speak up for you? And hopefully folks with an even bigger platform than us can speak up for you and say you were hoes and not getting in.
I mean, to me, it's like, and I know that this sounds, you know, cliche, but you do whatever you can to take their power to screw you away. It just means win every game possible. Like, you know, my Miami came very close to the playoff last year, but I can look at it and say, okay, if you didn't blow a 21-point lead at Syracuse, you would have been in the playoff. Like, you would have gotten to the SEC, to the ACC championship game. And even if you lost the ACC championship game, probably still would have gotten into the playoff, because the team that lost that got in last year. You know, don't lose to Georgia Tech. Don't lose to Syracuse as Miami did last year. And you know, give them the fewest possible opportunities to screw you over. Because, yeah, again, Miami, they were, I think, the second team out of the 12 team last year. It was Alabama, then Miami. So they were right there knocking on the door. I'm not saying they got screwed, believe me. But if you give them the fewest possible reasons to screw you, then you take that power away from the committee. So just win all your damn games.
Exactly. And even when people were talking about Miami early in the season, talking about, oh, they were saved by this call and that call, which some of those calls I did agree, very interesting calls. But what I always said, your job as a team is not to win games by 20. It is to be 1 point better than the other team.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. This is not European soccer. We do not use there's an aggregate in this score and that score and match up on how you beat the. No. Did you win your ball games? That's all you got to do. And it's a lot simpler than it sounds. I mean, it's a lot harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
Yes, it is very simple to say win all your games, but you know, you got to do what you got to do because that's the only way to give yourself 100% guaranteed shot to playoff right now when there's no auto bids.
Yeah,
outside of the conference champions, of course.
True. Well, and that's another one. You win your conference, they can't take that away from you, right? We appreciate everybody tuning in, making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods, and make sure for your next listen, you check out the portal. Brian Smith does an awesome job talking everything NIL, recruiting, which is heating up this summer. It's official visit season now. Transfer portal, which is cooling down. But as Mario Cristobal says, the portal is always open. And Brian Smith is always with you on the portal, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. And we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.